Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AVPN webinar on Shaping a Sustainable Post-COVID-19 World, a Corporate Perspective. I'm Kavita, Manager Knowledge and Member Engagement at the Asian Venture Philanthropy Network. AVPN is a unique funders network committed to building a high-impact philanthropy and social investment community across Asia. Currently, we have over 600 plus members across 59 countries, and we are very pleased to have two of our members based in India speaking today. Representing Hindustan Unilever Foundation, we have Reshma Anand, CEO, and Akanksha Sharma, who is the head CSR and Sustainability from Sterlite Tech Foundation. Reshma will enlighten us about how Hindustan Liver Foundation has changed its strategies to strengthen their grantee SPOs. Akanksha will let us know how Sterlite Tech Foundation is focusing on resilience and sustainable development during the pandemic. Before we proceed, a few housekeeping instructions. We will not take any questions during the presentation, but will open up the floor for Q&A after the speakers have presented. Please feel free to use the console to type in your questions while the speakers are still presenting, and I will raise the questions to our speakers in the Q&A session. If you have further questions that are not answered by the end of the webinar, you can email us at india@avpn.asia. You can see the questions that are posted by the other attendees, and you can actually upvote the questions that you like to be answered. The upvoted question will have highly likelihood of the speakers picking it up and answering. With great enthusiasm, I will now hand over the presentation to Reshma. Reshma, I am just giving you the control again. Please see if you can move the slides.
Thanks, Kavita. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here because I think it's a rare occasion for funders to be put on the spot. And I think I also find that perhaps this is a better time. If somebody had asked me to do this 2 months ago, I may not have had too many answers either. I think just as a brief background, our focus has always been on water security and water's intersection with agriculture in rural areas. But it goes without saying that the last 4 months have deeply challenged us as an organization, but have also given us some fantastic insights. And we're hoping to build our work, going forward based on everything that we have learned. I'm going to start with a brief trajectory. Kavita, I'm unable to move the slides though. So of course, in March, the first response across foundations was to pledge support, on a couple of areas. One was in terms of providing for, safety kits for frontline workers, whether it was healthcare workers, sanitation workers, or even, police. And then, of course, there was support to stranded migrants. A lot of focus went in terms of food aid. And it was also very clear that we were going to have a patient load as a country, which would be difficult to manage if we did not upgrade our healthcare facilities. And so this was, of course, the immediate response. But I think that as the lockdowns extended, it was extremely clear that that lives are going to be disrupted at scale. What we did was a series of very quick and rapid surveys. Kavita, I'm sorry, but the slides don't move. Yeah. And I think what was really clear was that the level of disruption was very varied across the country. So it was not like one, phenomena across the board. I just want to take a simple example of something we did in East UP. There had been an announcement that, food rations would be available for the next 3 months, and that households would get a cash transfer of 500 rupees. And what we realized that cash benefits had gone to about 20% of households. The flagship programs were actually not universally available to families. Narega, 3 out of 10 households actually had a job card. And the Rabi harvest had been seriously impacted because of mandis being shut and transportation not being available, which made farmers extremely concerned about the upcoming Kharif season. So what was very clear was that not just lives, but employment and, even just basic entitlements have been affected fairly significantly. I think what was also very clear was that there were two narratives that we were hearing repeatedly, right? The first narrative was, of course, in terms of the growing concern on shrinking CSR funds, and this was a valid concern. I want to particularly talk about this entire piece on, Webb's prediction of the 10 risks for the private sector. And why it's very interesting is that if you looked at the same chart for last year, for 2019, all the risks, in fact, most of the risks were green, which is environmental. And now what you saw was the fear of recession, the fear of bankruptcies, the fear of global supply chains getting disrupted. At the same time, the timing was such that a large part of monies in March, which typically would have gone, to nonprofits as part of their thematic areas, went into COVID relief. Some went into the PM CARES Fund. Some went into again other COVID mitigation related causes. But a large suck happened around March and then in April. But there was also an opportunity emerging from the stimulus announcements, which caused a lot of debates. But I want to focus on a few areas. One was, of course, the fact that there was a 50% additional outlay on NREGA. And then, the Garib Kalyan Yojana actually expanded the gamut of entitlements and social protection, opportunities for citizens. So this was a crazy time, right? Because you thought that monies are going to dry up, and then there were these announcements coming, one after the other. And I have to say that, to be able to respond very quickly and immediately, can be a bit of a challenge. And I think we kind of went around because we were actually looking for a direction. Now, interestingly, I happened to read Jacqueline Novogratz's book, The Manifesto for a Moral Revolution, around this time. And while the book, of course, is fascinating about Acumen Fund's own journey, there's one thing that stood out in the manifesto. That's the first line. It starts by standing with the poor. And she makes a very interesting clarification that what standing with the poor means that you walk alongside those you serve, you guide them, you help them build their confidence, you help them build their capabilities, you show up, but don't have any expectation of gratitude or thanks. And I think it was a huge, North Star for us at that point in time, because we were really struggling to figure out what we should do, in terms of our response. And there's another thing which she said, do what's right, not what's easy. So with these two goalposts, or North Stars, we said, what could be our approach, and how can we actually help, communities that have been, seeing significant disruption during this time. And so we've used the base of all our existing programs across about 14 states in India, with two focus areas. One is help communities access entitlements, and two, build resilience, because there are more shocks coming along the way. This is not the only. The three things we're doing there: one is just making sure that people have access to entitlements, whether these are cash transfers, rations, or any other government benefits. Two is to make sure that returning migrants and poor families get their assured days of work, of employment. And the third is critical seed support for small farmers, so that they have enough to feed themselves for both Rabi and the next Kharif season, and as a surplus for the country. Why this made sense, and frankly, I think we can always, berate ourselves for having missed this. Aid is X to X. X amount of aid means X amount of real value to the recipient. But when we look at accessing entitlements, that the government has put out, it's a 20 times return to the families, and so it was a no-brainer when we had figured it out. When we hadn't figured it out, we were really in a bit of a dizzy. And so that's really where, we've kind of, layered our existing work. We continue to work, in all the spaces that have defined what our core strategy on water security are. But I think that, standing with communities has given us a very clear gateway for the way we would look at working with our partners across three horizons. The first is the immediate horizon, which is fixing the gaps in entitlements. The second is to really help farmers adopt regenerative agricultural practices and make markets work for farmers, particularly in rain-fed systems. And the third horizon is to actually catalyze a job economy in rural India on agriculture and water, because a number of returning migrants, are not really going to go back. And so I think we see this as an opportunity to build very strong adjacencies in our programs, and make sure that we are actually serving the communities that we set up. What all of this has done, it's given us a manifesto of possibilities. It is very hard to predict what the future is going to be. And so I'm not even putting any prediction out here. But what I'm putting forward and proposing is actually a manifesto of possibilities for funders, right? And what do we see that? We will give more. And I want to qualify that by saying a lot more than cash, right? What we've seen over the last 4 months is deeper engagement than we've ever had with our program partners. Time, skills, networks, knowledge, all of these are resources, as well as cash, right? And what we've also found very exciting is that the community of givers itself has expanded from retail fundraising, to families, residential associations, brands, companies, philanthropists. The market for givers has expanded. And it's really important to make sure that we support this expansion and we don't see this as a one-time aberration. The second thing that we need to do is to make sure that we are really embracing technology for good. And I find this fascinating that whenever program budgets are discussed, there's a lot of, debate around, tech, how much hardware, how much software, why do you have to spend this kind of money? But interestingly, what we figured out was that, partners who had the capacity to do rapid surveys, real-time data platforms, provide for critical content through SMS or IVR, to do short-term digital fundraising programs, they were not an aberration. They brought in a certain agility to those organizations that is here to stay, and it's really worth investing in. Right? We will focus more than ever on social protection. I think we are guilty. We thought it's happening. We assumed that all of this is happening in the background. We never really looked at it carefully. But I think that there was another fundamental flaw in the way we were approaching our programs earlier. Development goals cannot be achieved by cherry picking who we want to impact. We have to ensure that no household is left behind. So entitlements for all and basic entitlements for all is very doable, and we are setting ourselves up for this challenge not because we are foolish, but because we are also extremely enthused by the response we've got from our partners. I think the other thing that we see is really investing heavily in the first mile. We need to shift our focus from large implementation teams to actually building the cadre of frontline workers and community-based institutions. If we invest in their capacity, they're the implementation arm of programs, and they will actually make sure that the sustainability of programs is intact. I want to bring a particular example. In East UP, we're actually building an entire cadre of women extension workers who work with local farmers. Our vision is that they will graduate to being entrepreneurs over a period of time, and they're the ones who will actually anchor and grow the program even when we've chosen to exit. Collaboration and partnerships, bad words, but bad words because we haven't done our homework. I think we will partner by default, not by default. Not by exception or chance, but because that's the only way to work. This is again our view that the unit of one program, one grantee, one domain area has diminishing returns, right? And as funders, we can serve the cause of collaborative efforts if we design with partners our programs in a way that brings in multiple teams, people, and organizations. It doesn't happen by magic. Right? And again, we've seen that in programs where we've done this deliberately, collaboration is a very, very interesting outcome, but hoping for it doesn't really cause it. We will also learn to appreciate that as much as we may love scale, small can be beautiful and effective. I think what this last 4 months has borne out for us is that local grassroots organizations are here to save. They were the first responders, very quick to assess what their communities need, very nimble to move on the ground, very quick to leverage their local relationships. And I think the onus is on us to make sure we secure them and we enable them to thrive. There's also something very valuable in that DNA. So how do we transplant that DNA with some of our larger partners by ensuring that this is really, even a large organization works as an organism of smaller grassroots organizations that know exactly what their communities need on the ground. There's a lot of concern that all the money will go to COVID, what will happen to health, education, environment, etc. We will come back to that, right? And I think that's really where we have to play an important role, which is to temper the urge of partners to pivot entirely to COVID relief. I think we need to also help them think through and segment HR capacity and finances in doing relief, existing program continuity, and growth, and also help them recognize trade offs and then take an informed call. I just asked a team member to share a list of programs done by one of our partners. They're a mid-sized organization working in central India, and I saw about 13 programs. And that just kind of blew my mind. Imagine trying to run 13 program teams in a mid-sized organization. So how do we actually help partners to not just abandon what their core mission is, but really understand that do you have the capacity to isolate between relief, program continuity, and growth. And whatever you choose to do, are the trade-offs very clear? We will admit we're obsessed with metrics, but impacting lives cannot be reduced to just a set of statistics. I think we're building cadre, grantees, and assets which we're not really taking focus on. When we look at our NGO partners, it's their people, their reach, their cadres, their data systems, the way they connect with local government, the networks that they've built over time, right? It's very clear that in a crisis, these assets serve our partners and our cause really well, but I'm sure that in normal times, they give multiple returns. I don't think we're so obsessed with thematic outcomes that we are actually losing sight of the fact that these are the core assets that are going to build stronger institutions for the future as well. And if some of you think that none of this applies to you, that's fine too, because you can create your own manifesto of possibilities. I think we're very clear this is not the first crisis of our lifetimes. This is neither the last one. What we can do is reimagine how we choose to stand with our communities. And I'd like to end with that. I think we're still work in progress. And but what we're really enthused with is the energy with which our partners are supporting our own journey as we're trying to figure out how to do the best we can. Thank you.
Akanksha, you need to unmute yourself.
Sure, thank you. So thank you, EVPN, for having me here. And Reshma, are you moving the slides? Okay. Great, thank you. And I'll just, pick up from from the very interesting presentation of Reshma on technology, which I'm representing. So I'm, Sterlite Technologies is basically data network innovators. And we are one of the leading global innovators of connectivity solutions, network services, and network software. And we embrace the unique sustainable development goals, not just in terms of policy, but also in practices. And I'll talk about it in greater detail. So, the times that we have just seen are actually one of the most unprecedented ones. And, in fact, unprecedented is one of the most widely Googled word in last 2-3 months, and which talks about that, how clueless we were in finding out solutions for development and social impact. And looking after the social impact of an organization that provides technology solution wasn't easy either, because all the time we were trying to figure out feasible ways where we can support not just the grassroots functioning better, but also enable organizations, small, medium, and large, in terms of better connectivity and tech solutions, where tech can be a large enabler for social impact. So we have already been working largely with the telcos, cloud companies, cities and networks, and large organizations in order to provide better citizen networks and a transformation for digital inclusion, which has always been the core that we stand for. The last few months have again reinforced the need for having a better digital inclusive ecosystem at all levels. So not just in terms of the working operations that we do, but also because of the lockdown and the various manifestations of that, how can we have a better connected world? It's something that we were essentially focusing upon out of our community interventions also. So far, we have reached out to over 1.32 million lives, and through various interventions on environment, healthcare, women empowerment, and education. And like how Reshma was talking about the real empowerment, and how COVID-19 pandemic has really redefined the entire narrative of development, leaving all of us absolutely clueless about the solutions. So we really saw, along with everybody else, some real big gaps in terms of the community resilience, workforce stagnation, reverse migration that happened back to the villages and community. Lack of funding, because it was again a large, question that if everything is going towards COVID, how would other areas of development be funded? And as per the latest report on the SDG index, where India stands 117th position on the global SDG index, it really created a greater concern, that how would we, as funders and social impact leaders will be, look at the entire solution at the country level. We tried looking at some of them in terms of extending our current resource pool, leveraging technology. I think that would, remain the core of my talk also here, that at community level, at employee level, and also at, customers level. So, it is not just about community that we enable solutions for. I think inclusivity or sustainable development is how organizations and larger institutions embrace inclusivity at all levels. And it is not just about the 2% contribution of foundations or corporates. I think it's largely about enabling the entire ecosystem for sustainable development and growth. So we really support it in terms of essential supplies, in addition to providing protective gears and critical gear. Maharashtra remained one of our focus territories and state because of our essential operational focus out there, and also because the state unfortunately
We're sorry. I think Akanksha dropped off due to bad network. We request you till then to kindly post your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be picking it up with Reshma. And as soon as Akanksha joins us back, we'll restart the presentation with her.
Can you all see me and hear me? Kavita, would you please confirm? I'm really sorry.
Yes, we can see you, Akanksha. Please carry on.
Sure. Yeah, so our essential effort was towards building community resilience against the pandemic. And we started a awareness initiative somewhere in March, where our focus was on increasing awareness, because we were already having a lot of community structures where in the remote areas we were carrying out digital literacy programs and initiatives. So that became the backbone to leverage further, that how can we build community capabilities to work in spite of the lockdown. And what really gives me pleasure in terms of the real empowerment is when I hear stories of our SHG women beneficiaries sitting in some remote village of Maharashtra. And in spite of the lockdown, they were making their products and selling it on global platforms like Amazon. Is something that I would call empowerment, which is equivalent to access of opportunities as compared to any other person, sitting in a developed part of the world. And so we were trying to create hope, at all levels with the community. However, resources, as we all know, are always short of. And this was the time when nothing would qualify as enough. So there were a lot of support extended to the migrant laborers. A lot of collaborations happened with the counterparts in terms of the government and the public. Uh, yeah. Also, we were essentially operating in largely tribal dominated geographies like Silvassa. And, the topography of that area is such where, the houses are really scattered, and, public transportation and their healthcare facilities are really not up to the mark. So we really tried extending our facilities out there. Partnership became the key, as, Reshma also mentioned in her talk, that and I think it is not just an option for us anymore, because I think it is not just about public private partnership. This time has really told us that how can private partnership, and partnership in fact at all levels, panchayat private partnerships, can really bring more possibilities and opportunities for development and collaborations. So we tried working with the state governments, other private organizations, with grassroots organizations, and in places like Silvassa, and extending rapid testing services, also, healthcare services in terms of taking them to the hospital. And Aurangabad was one of our operational focus areas, and it was also one of the hotspots of the state. And we tried ensuring digital empowerment in terms of skilling people, and especially women and the lesser privileged elderly population, on how to operate, in a more technology savvy world. I think that has become one of the life survival skills. So, that's something that we tried doing it. Readjusting to the new normal is also something that we all are trying to adapt to. Nobody has cracked the solution, but we all are trying to digitally innovate, figure out more and better solutions that stimulate, better crisis management response. And we look at it in a way that joint action frameworks can be explored better. And we are exploring on the impact investing front with the governments, where, a large portion of community can be benefited through maximization of resources. And I think the times really call for more resilience, not just at the community level, but also at the funders level, that how can we redefine the entire narrative, bring more innovation and technology enabled initiatives into force. And we are ready to support, through this forum or any other forum, if organizations that have better solutions on technology part, to reach out to community and provide last mile solutions for bettering people's lives. Thank you.
We will now be taking the questions from the attendees. We already have some questions that have come up. So the first question is for you, Reshma. Although small model is a good idea, but how do we make these replicable for efficient use of resources and avoid redundancy?
I think we were asked this question on scale several times, and because we didn't have the answer, we crowdsourced it from from other organizations. So that so for example, I think we were very enthused with the way Pratham came up with the idea of the ASA report. Right? It is today done through a network of volunteers, but it is basically a tool that's replicated many times over across, if I'm not mistaken, over 400 districts in India. So I think we have a fundamental aversion because we think that small is not good enough. But I think that we need to also understand that scale has different dimensions. Scale is not just operating scale. And frankly, the only way scale is going to happen is when governments do it, not because CSR decides that scale is important or organizations can do it. What we need to make sure is that we have credible solutions, and those solutions, unless and until they don't integrate with government systems, are not really going to see the kind of scale that we have, or the ambition for scale that we have. When it comes to replication, I think some solutions are replicable and have been done. The tools around social mobilization have been replicated. I mean, Akansha referred to self-help groups. It's probably the largest, collectivized model that's been replicated across India. So I think there are ways in which you can replicate. We must recognize, though, that India requires a large number of diverse solutions to be scaled. It's not one thing that's going to kind of, save our day. So it's also about tempering what do you think is a good, operating optimum scale of the solution that you're trying to deploy, and what is the end game really, right? And once that is set, I think the expectations, both on the funder side as well as on the grantee organizations, tend to get more aligned. But I think the question on scale has it's gone through various cycles. I think we are beginning to recognize that scale has other dimensions than just how many villages, how many households, how many people.
Thank you, Reshma. The next question is for you, Akanksha. Did your program goals change as a result of COVID? How did you and your partners deal with that?
It's a very interesting question to a tech company, because I think not really in terms of the program focus change, but I think we try to definitely look at better solutions to amplify our impact, leveraging technology. And for that, I think the partner organizations played a very crucial role in terms of, firstly, being very welcoming to adapt to technology. I think today I'm happy to share some examples, like every single beneficiary or every single person who's getting in some way impacted is we are having the real-time data. All our initiatives geographically are geotagged. So I think it is something about the new normal, which we know that technology has the key. We all are trying to find better solutions for. Also, I think our focus, fortunately, has been on digital literacy in a big way. And the recent times have told us very clearly that technology is a very essential survival skill. So I think especially in the rural communities and the lesser privileged ones, I think there is still a digital divide, and which we try to bridge in terms of, focused smaller training camps in spite of the lockdown, I think with the help of the district administration, because people, do not actually know how to apply for jobs, or how to, and a lot of workforce has been unfortunately out of jobs in last 4-5 months. There were a lot of essential household helps required in terms of, your electricity bill, water bill, and all of that. And I think last few months have really revealed a lot about redefining the entire lifestyle, which is more technology reliant. So definitely, we have tried to relook at it with a different lens. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Akanksha. The next question is for you, Reshma. Most of the funders only fund programmatic elements. So how do you see the funding of capacity building or organizational development of NGOs happening now?
So I think again it's important to look at your portfolio of funders, right? And to figure out how the the way if you're building your portfolio of funders, you've got funders complementing both sets. So first and foremost, there is no such thing as funders don't support capacity building or they don't support organizational development. I mean, and I can only speak, out of our experience. In fact, most of our support is towards actually people and systems and and training and capacity. Right? So I think what helps sometimes is to actually, when you're bringing in a certain portfolio of funders for a program, there is a bit of a matchmaking sometimes that needs to be done, or a fitting that needs to be done. But there are funders that recognize the value of putting in investments in quality resources and programs, and to also look at what are the specific capacity gaps. One of the key things that we try and encourage partners to do is to do their own self-assessment and say, okay, where do you think you have capacity gaps that need to be bridged if you have to deliver a program of this nature, and how do you actually intend to bridge those capacity gaps. So, again, as I said, there are going to be ranges and hues of funders. As a non-profit organization, I think often it's not an enviable task, but it just helps sometimes to do a little bit of this, selection, so to speak, or just making sure that you have adequate funders who are also willing to kind of support some of the larger institutional costs, right? So there are funders who have very short-term, expectations. There are funders who are willing to look at a 3-year horizon, some who are willing to look at a 5-year horizon. And sometimes it is a balancing act that needs to be done.
Thank you, Reshma. The next question is for you, Akanksha. Can you throw some more light on the impact investing program that you're doing with the government?
Sure. We are at the exploration stage, and I must mention that. However, impact investment really shares the way forward plan in terms of how resources can be maximized better. Because I think if you look at the entire model of privatization and how it grew over last centuries, I think it also tells a story that how resources can be better optimized when there is an assured return of investments. And I think the development sector essentially needs that, because we cannot actually just rely on the public policies or the schemes laid out by the government, and the recent times have clearly shared that. Also, in terms of the philanthropic contributions and the the development sector contributions, the resources are always limited. And I think it clearly tells us that how much potential it has, in terms of bridging the gap between the demand and the supply of resources. There's no other way but to maximize the resource pool. So I think India has already launched many social impact bonds, and I think there are many others like Tata's and many more organizations who are leading on that front. So we are essentially exploring it on the tech side, that how can technology be an enabler on social impact maximization, providing last mile connectivity solutions for community impact. And we are not essentially focusing only upon healthcare or education, but we are trying to keep it open on tech part for community impact. And I would limit my comments on this because it is at exploration stage, but I definitely see better alignment in the years to come between CSR and impact investments.
Thank you, Akanksha. There's one question which I think both you and Reshma can answer, because both of you spoke about technology. Somebody has asked, with COVID, we realize the major issue with tech especially is hazardous on children. Taking into account this, do you think we are ready to be tech dependent now? I think, Reshma, you can start with answering, and then Akanksha, you can take it up.
So I probably need the question to be asked again because I'm
Yeah.
not sure I got it.
So it seems like they are asking, with COVID, we realized the major issues with tech, especially with children, which we've seen is hazardous. I think they're speaking about the exposure of screen time for children. So taking this into account, do you think we are ready for tech dependency post-COVID?
So I think again, it's really important to identify, what technology can do in a positive and constructive way. So we have frontline workers who are equipped with digital access. What it has allowed them to do in a very, trying and stressful time like this is to actually give, real time situation on the ground, and to be able to help us work with our partners to provide for an appropriate response. I think that again, it all boils down to how technology is used. A lot of extensive, adoption of digital technologies is making a difference to farmers across the country because they're getting, advisories which are specific to, the crop they grow in the region that they grow from local experts. So there are a lot of benefits, that one has seen, play out over the last 4 months. um, you know, uh, Screen time for children is like a real challenge. But I think the bigger issue and the concern that we are going to hold ourselves accountable to when we start looking at deployment of technology are, issues around privacy, issues around permission, issues around data security. I think those are definitely, larger concerns on our mind right now. Um, and I think that's probably what I think that we barely scratch the surface when it comes to how digital tools, data-driven decision-making tools can really go a long way in terms of helping communities, individuals really take decisions that serve them well. And I think that's the whole reason why we're in this space. It is about ensuring that citizens and communities have the agency to solve for their problems, that they're not dependent on the system constantly to do so, right? So technology is an enabler. It is not the only thing you need, right? At the end of the day, you are going to need good actors using technology for better. And as I said, I think our major concern today is around privacy, is around data security, and that is something that we would make sure that we kind of hold ourselves accountable to.
I would just add to what Reshma just mentioned. I think while technology is a big enabler, and I would like to demonstrate it, with some of our initiatives. So one program that we did at the Gram Panchayat level is providing digital access through one of our initiatives, and we are trying to do it at some of the aspiration districts identified by the Niti Aayog. And how some of those very remote and not so connected villages have now holistic offerings of services in terms of better healthcare through portals like Doc Online, where telemedicine is an enabler, skilling of women and youth because of lockdown. And also we have to see it with a lens that these are unprecedented times, and nobody has actually a clear solution for any of these things that we are discussing perhaps today. And therefore we have to really see, and a lot of it is also hit and trial, that whatever works in the community is received well. So I think we all are trying to experiment more leveraging technology. Coming back to the question that are we ready for tech enabled solutions, I think the choice is no more with us, in a way that the times have been such that we have to survive on technology, and we all have been trying to do that. I think the larger question is that how are we using it for social impact and betterment? I think that is something that we have to really see, putting the right kind of filters, and like how Reshma was talking about, that creating more awareness on cybersecurity and cyber crimes and all other. So I think the ecosystem awareness largely needs to be generated more on the better use of technology for all age groups, not just for children.
Thank you, both of you. This another question which I would want both of you to answer, and it's: is there a growing priority for attending immediate problems or outputs rather than working together for long-term sustainable solution? I think this is very valid when it comes to the COVID situation, where a lot of organizations have shifted their focus more on the immediate outcomes. So how would you like to address this? Reshma, would you like to start?
So again, I think organizations have gone through a journey, and this is true across the board. Like I had shared, the immediate response was more aid driven. Once that was done, once we started to hear that the government system is actually kicking in parts, some of our own partners came back to us and said, we don't require so much support for aid, but we now need to start thinking about what do we do for for job creation. So then they started working towards getting a lot of returning migrants access to job cards so they could benefit from the Reka. So I think that we are very clearly, which is why I shared there are three horizons, and horizon zero may have been eight, but I think now very clearly there is a medium term which is living with COVID. As post COVID, God knows when that's going to happen, but living with COVID, what is it that we can do effectively in our programs with our communities is a dialogue that we are having, on an ongoing basis with our partners. So, for example, when the Kharif season kicked in, we had a real, reasonable understanding of what were the specific challenges in different states, because different states followed, a different protocol for lockdowns and so on and so forth. And then, work with partners in terms of what could be an effective way, for them to get program operations going on the ground. So I think that, as I said again, from our experience, it's very clear. We've looked at it in different phases. We've got our line of sight right now in terms of at least what this season will look like. Having said that, we keep talking amongst ourselves that, you might have more lockdowns or, isolated lockdowns or what have you. So we've got to keep, our eye on the ball. The only thing that's very critical in a time like this is to have, regular dialogue with partners, because we're also in a phase where we're taking very, very quick decisions based on what our best assessment is of the situation on the ground. So yes, there's a line of sight on the medium term for sure.
Akanksha, would you like to add something?
Well, so I agree with Reshma. Essentially, I think these have been very dynamic times, and I think most of the organizations try to prioritize, between the community demands and the solutions that they had in terms of the offerings or the programs. I think the partners here played a very crucial role in terms of making the right kind of prioritization to the funders, because I think while a lot of information was reaching out to people who are at the decision making positions, there was also a lot of window for misinformation to pass on from the communities. And I think there was also some sort of overlap between the initiatives of many organizations, but that was, I think, also because everybody was trying to help and support communities in a better way. So I think in situations like this, what it also calls for a better directive by the government in terms of the community needs and supplies. And many other countries, if you see, they have tried to do that in a much better way. So I would definitely see that there was some gap in terms of the prioritization of needs by the funders. But I think essentially it was more about responding to the immediate need of the hour. Yeah, so I think funders played a very important role along with the partner organizations who were communicating directly with the communities.
So we don't have any more questions. So I would like to thank everyone for participating in this interesting session. Thank you very much, Reshma and Akanksha. And we will be posting the webinar recording on our website by next week. So please look out for it. I'll just share a brief about the AVPN deal share, which actually works in supporting the SPO community. AVPN is collaborating with our members to support the nonprofit organizations survive, thrive, and become financially sustainable during COVID-19. If you would like to explore ways in which we could work together to support the nonprofit community, please reach out to us at dealshare@avpn.asia. Thank you very much for this wonderful session, Reshma and Akanksha. And I thank all the attendees for spending the time with us, and have a good day, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Kavita. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.